Hi and welcome to another week at COP23. We're at the CGIAR booth today with Louis Verchot, who is the Director for Soil and Landscapes for Sustainability at CIAT, which is the International Centre for Tropical Agriculture. Welcome, Lou. Great to have you here.
Thanks. Nice to be
Maybe
here.
You can just give us a brief introduction of what that all means and what is that you do.
Sure. So I'm the Director of the Soils and Landscapes for Sustainability Research Program at CIAT. And we are a group that works on questions related to soil health, how improved soil health can contribute to sustainability of agriculture and resilience in the face of climate change, how it can also contribute to mitigation of climate change. And we have a big area of research on restoration of degraded lands and degraded landscapes, where we do a lot of work on sort of the biological and physical side of the soils research. We also have a number of team members who work on the social science. So they look at adoption, they look at the underlying drivers, economic and social drivers of land degradation or poor soil health, and help us understand what can policymakers do, what can decision makers do, what can development agencies do to change the underlying causes for why people make certain decisions about that lead to unsustainable practices, so we can put proper incentives in place. So it's really a multifaceted and multi-disciplinary research team focused on improving soil health and all the good things that improved soil health leads to with the types of outcomes we're looking for.
Excellent. So last week, there's been a number of negotiations going on in the background, away from where we are here, but all focused on pushing forward agriculture and sort of climate change agenda. Maybe you can talk us through some of the things that have been going on that you've witnessed or you would like to see, and where perhaps things are getting stuck, maybe, and what we can do to push that forward.
Well, within the climate change negotiations, there's always been sort of the two divergent viewpoints. So developing countries are generally more preoccupied with mitigation than they are with adaptation. Developing countries are more preoccupied with adaptation than mitigation. Developed countries are more preoccupied by mitigation. So they want to see how can they decrease agricultural emissions. Agriculture is about 25 to 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, so it's an important contributor. So their objectives here are to look at how can we reduce those emissions and make agriculture more sustainable, knowing that we have to grow agricultural productivity to meet the needs of growing populations. So if agriculture is going to grow, how can we make it greener? How can we reduce the emissions and reduce the emissions intensity in agriculture? Developing countries, they see that agriculture is the motor of their economies. They don't want to give up agricultural productivity. What they want to do is find ways to adapt so that they can continue to provide employment to the people in their countries and deal with the curveball that climate change is throwing them right now. So where there are many places in the world where climate variability is really limiting agricultural production. It's making it a more marginal economic exercise for farmers, and so their objective is really to figure out how to adapt to that. So these different viewpoints make it difficult for the two groups to come together around a common agenda because they're not pursuing the same objective, or they don't perceive they're pursuing the same objective, and so that's really led to the block that we've seen. And this block is not new. It's been a constraint for the past 8 or 10 years in these negotiations. So they're not making any progress on that.
Okay, well that's a challenge, and hopefully some things this year can help push that forward.
Exactly, and so this is I think the type of research that we're trying to work on in my group. We have a new paper that will be out on Wednesday that shows, for example, the carbon sequestration potential that you can achieve in soils, and I think this actually could be one of those bridge areas where if you're improving soil health, you're sequestering carbon, so you're contributing to mitigation. You're improving the nutrient and water regimes within soils, so you're improving productivity. So you're making these systems more resilient. So you're actually contributing to the adaptation side of the equation. And I think this is where science can begin to articulate a common agenda. Whether your objective is adaptation or mitigation, there are some things that you can do that actually serve both purposes. And if that can be a way to break the logjam in these negotiations, they don't have to agree on what the objective is, but certainly if some of the activities are common across the two objectives, maybe it's better to start with the low-hanging fruit, invest in those types of activities, put in place policies to promote those types of activities, put in place the programs in the Green Climate Fund or other types of funding mechanisms that they have here to promote those types of activities as a way to make progress. And then, as you make progress, you build trust and you build common understanding. If we've been at this for 10 years, you got to start to try something different, right? And maybe this is a place to try something different. pick a couple of approaches that serve both purposes, move forward on those, and then come back to the table in 2 or 3 years when you've got some progress made, and see what next steps you can take.
Excellent. And that's really the crux of it, isn't it? Is sequestration really works on both mitigation and adaptation.
That's right.
And that's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of it. But it's also it's significant. I mean, we can pull, if across the world, if farmers are incentivized to change practices, they could pull between 3 and 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere every single year. And just to put it in that perspective, the U.S. emits 5 billion tons per year, right? So we're talking about something on that order of magnitude, right? So it's huge, but then think of the resilience that gives you, in these countries. And the countries that have the greatest potential are a lot of the emerging economies. So it's India, China, U.S. of course, Europe of course, but African countries could make very significant contributions to soil carbon sequestration and improve their soil health. 50% of the world's agricultural lands are degraded. 50%. Think of what that's doing and we need to grow agricultural productivity. So it's at the same time we want to save forests, so we don't want to expand the agricultural frontier. So if we're going to have to invest at some point in restoring these degraded lands and making them more productive. And so this is sort of one of these win-win types of things, and it also contributes to poverty alleviation and some of the other dimensions of the sustainable development goals that the international community has decided is its agenda going forward to 2030.
So it really works across so many different fields there, doesn't it, the soil sequestration, and really pulls in, and just those numbers are quite staggering, and that would have a huge impact, like you say, in the emerging economies, in the developing world, where they're probably going to see the results of this a lot faster.
That's right. That's right, and the spillover effects in their economies are going to be very large. 70 to 80% of Africans earn their living out of subsistence agriculture or agriculture in general. And so building that up and making that more profitable is going to contribute to poverty reduction. It's going to contribute to nutritional health and food security. So.
Excellent. So this paper you're coming out tomorrow, you touched on it briefly. What can we expect, and is there going to be some new research and data that's going to help, say, with the negotiations, or more importantly, I suppose, with farmers and in the developing world?
Yeah. So the paper that's coming out, we kept it very simple. We asked a very simple question, how much carbon could you sequester in soils globally if farmers were to take up more sustainable land management practices? And we applied this across the globe and looked at the different types of technologies, came up with some average figures, and then looked at where in the world do we have soils that had the physical and biological conditions to actually contribute to that. So we took the sandy soils out, we took the organic soils out. We really tried to focus on what do we know about areas that have the potential, and then what is that magnitude of potential scale up to, knowing what we have in our best practices. And so I think it's hopefully a powerful message that, as I said, it speaks to multiple objectives, but it makes common sense. We know we have to start restoring the degraded lands, but also stop the degradation that's ongoing if we're going to meet the food needs of the population by 2050.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I look forward to reading it tomorrow. Thank you, Lou.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's been great having you here. Stay tuned for more from CGIAR at COP23 right here on Facebook.